No TV and no beer make Homer something something.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Hey everybody, welcome back to What the Hell Happened to Them? Jack attacks the cast. That's right, Jack Nicholson this season. I am your host, Patrick Scale, and joining me on the line is a man who was a dull boy when he has only worked, Joe Vekeman.
Hi.
And we have a special guest this week, fellow horror aficionado, Braden Schleuter.
Hello, everyone.
And on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer reminding me to remind you that you can email the cast at whathappenedtothemcast@gmail.com. And our sponsor this week is Twin Town Games. Come play with us forever and ever and ever and presumably ever. All right, Joe, what movie are we doing this week?
We watched Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yes, the glory of the 70s is on its way out, but at least we get to go out with a bang, eh, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, this movie was definitely shot in the 70s.
Yes, it was. That's what I've said. The sensibilities of the 70s still alive in The Shining. All right, what happens in this movie for those who somehow don't know?
Oh, yes. What does happen in this movie? A family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from past and future.
That is an interesting synopsis. I don't think I would phrase it that way.
Yeah, well, that's how IMDb does it.
Well, Joe, you seem to have something you're really eager to discuss, so why don't you just say that, get that out of the way first, and then we'll go into stuff.
Well, to get Jack Nicholson in the right agitated mood,
oh no,
he was fed only cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks, which he hates. What a great fact.
Did he agree to this, or he just kept going for lunch and they're like, cheese or you're fired?
Cheese sandwiches.
So what's on a cheese sandwich? Just cheese?
It's like an American single probably on Wonder Bread.
It's just crap.
What if it was just like a cold piece of cheese with like 2 cold slices of bread?
Like, what's the point of the bread? Like, what? It's not a meal. No wonder he's mad. He's malnourished.
Now he wants to kill his family. I would want to too.
Yeah, so Kubrick is like psychologically tormenting Shelley Duvall and starving Jack Nicholson. This would not fly in 2023.
And there's a child on set.
Yeah, no wonder we can't make a good Shining film anymore. Jeez, we're not allowed to torture people.
How about this one? For the scene in which Jack breaks down the bathroom door, the props department built a door that could be easily broken. However, Jack Nicholson had worked as a volunteer fire marshal and tore it apart far too easily. The props department were then forced to build a stronger door.
Did you say he had to work in a volunteer capacity?
No. He didn't have to. He
chose to.
He had work. Okay.
It's past tense. Yeah, he had
once
work. He doesn't continue to be a fire marshal.
I'm like, you can't compel people to be volunteers. It defeats the purpose. You're just making them interns at that point.
This shit is crazy. The shot of the tennis ball rolling into Danny's toys took 50 takes to get right. 50 takes? Just roll the fucking ball.
Listen, if you're going to ask the actors to do 50 takes, you might as well ask the props. They're going to complain less.
That tennis ball has to be perfectly centered with the line on the
carpeting,
carpet.
yeah, I know.
So, yeah, I'm surprised it didn't take more almost.
I'd fire the props guy who can't seem to throw a ball well.
Yeah, you need to build like a little slide so you can just put the ball at the top and just like let it roll down, centered every time.
All right. This is stuff I had no idea about. Stanley Kubrick considered Robert De Niro and Robin Williams for the role of Jack Torrance, but decided against them. Kubrick did not think De Niro would suit the role after watching his performance in Taxi Driver.
I was hoping you were going to say Last Tycoon. I'm like, Jack strikes again.
He deemed De Niro not psychotic enough for the role. He did not think Williams would suit the role after watching his performance on Mork and Mindy, as he deemed him too psychotic for the role. According to Stephen King, Kubrick also briefly considered Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, Robin Williams, and Robert De Niro.
I mean, Robert De Niro is pretty crazy in Cape Fear, right? When did that come out?
Yes!
That was the 90s,
That's
wasn't
91.
It?
Yeah. So he could have done it.
Incredible.
Well, but Kubrick didn't know. I like the idea of Robin Williams being too psychotic.
Yeah, I know, from Mork and Mindy.
Psychotic. Yeah, off of his sitcom performance. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Kubrick saw The Last Tycoon, because I very strongly believe Kubrick is well versed in Nicholson's filmography, and that's why we have Scatman Crothers in this movie.
Ah, yes.
Scatman's great.
Scatman in a surprising amount of Jack Nicholson films, hanging out with Jack Nicholson for 10 minutes. Always very brief in a movie is Jack Nicholson. And it's interesting, Robin Williams was too psychotic, because a lot of problems people have with this adaptation is they're disappointed in Jack Nicholson sort of starting off a bit unhinged in the movie. I'm sorry, in the novel, and then in the remake miniseries, Jack Nicholson is sort of a sane person struggling with the insanity influences of The Shining, where in this movie it's more of an insane man trying to remain sane. Have you guys seen the miniseries, the 4.5-hour miniseries?
No, I haven't.
I have not.
I have seen it, and I also saw it again this week in preparation for this podcast.
Jesus Christ.
I'll tell you, I also saw The Shining sequel again.
Oh, Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Good movie.
No,
That is a
you're
good movie.
wrong. You're both wrong.
Director's
Did
cut's
you watch the
good.
director's cut?
How
There you
long
go.
is the director's cut? It doesn't matter.
3 solid hours, I believe.
Oh, you're not going to like the director's cut
I
either.
didn't want my
just
stupid
makes it longer,
superhero film in my goddamn Shining sequel. I wanted another They're like, oh, we're going to be respectful to the Shining. So why didn't you respectful to the tone in any way, shape, or form? Anyway, I'll get into that later, because
we'll talk.
The sequel's got trouble because it has to be faithful to the movie that Stephen King hates while adapting a novel that ignores the Stephen King movie. So you're already in trouble there. And then I saw the unhinged documentary Room 237 again as well.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I went
revisited
full
that.
on The Shining in this film for my research. So let's talk about, is this movie scary? And does Jack Nicholson being crazy from the outset help it?
Yeah, I think it helps it that he was crazy from the beginning. Because the people who complain about that, I think, are wanting a different movie.
Yes.
And him being crazy at the beginning, like, you already know at the beginning that he's alcoholic, he's abusive, his family's already scared of him, you know? So, like, having this, like, descent into him being crazy wouldn't really serve the purposes that, you know, the story's trying to convey. It's like, his family already fears this man, so there's no reason for him to have that sort of traditional, like, oh, he seems well-adjusted and normal, and then it's the hotel that, you know, fucks him up. It's that he was already fucked up before they even got there. And yeah, so I think it works incredibly well. And then rewatching it too, I think Shelley Duvall does a great job of towing this line between trying to be supportive of him while being very careful to not set him off at any given moment, which obviously after he gets there, he becomes very irritable very early on. Even on the drive up, you can tell he's already annoyed at his family. Yeah. So I think it just makes it much more tragic in that sense and much more effective.
What about you, Joe?
I totally agree. This is the only version I want to see. I really don't want to see the Stephen King, like, favorited miniseries or whatever. Nicholson is perfection in this role. He plays madness so well. He plays irritation even better. He's just a frustrated father, an annoyed husband, and it's his role. There's no one else who can do this.
There have been a few films that I think wouldn't work with Jack Nicholson weren't there, usually involving his charisma. This one's not taking advantage of his charisma because he never really like him per se in the film, but also I just don't know who else could play this. And I saw in the miniseries Steven Weber plays it, and, you know, as a guy from old sitcoms, I've seen him around before, and so I go like, yeah, that's kind of a TV style Jack Nicholson, but the performances in this movie are often maligned, but having especially recently watched this other version again, it turns it more into a moral play. And so it's less spooky. There's a lot of just like, oh no, things are moving randomly for 2 out of the 4.5 hours. How are these chairs moving? Ghost! Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, becomes less scary because it's not really him. He's just getting possessed by ghosts in a less sexy way than in the movie Ghost. That itself is not super spooky, but something about you being in a family with a father who's an alcoholic and everybody's super afraid of him all the time is just naturally terrifying.
I mean, he already hurt the kid's arm. Like, didn't he like break the kid's arm or like?
He's all like Brady say. He's already angry at them on the way up there, and he's like a fuckhead. And you're like, oh my god, you're gonna be there for 5 months with no help with that guy, and ostensibly he's our main character. Of course that's terrifying. That's if it's more grounded. Like, I don't need chairs to move randomly on screen and be like, oh no, ghosts. I don't even need there to be ghosts. I'm just afraid that this guy's gonna beat the shit out of them. It's scary already. And even the interview, he's so, I don't know, like sociopathically insincere in that film. Like, you know, you're dealing with a crazy person right away. You may not be able to pinpoint it as easily as you can in that car ride, especially since you don't have all that background information yet, but you're already like, something's off about this guy, and he's not even possessed yet. That's creepy. And Shelley Duvall, I think, gets unfairly maligned.
Yes.
And everybody's like, but in the book and in the miniseries, she like can handle herself better and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, but she's more powerless here because that's the enabling dynamic that's set up. Like, we're looking at this family in decline and the elements for it. Is she not as well-rounded? Maybe, but also there are women that's a type of woman that is in a relationship with a man like Jack Torrance that allows Jack Torrance to be the head of the family still. And she does okay. She's like locking him up and like knocking him out and like cutting his hand through. She's not helpless. She's getting her son out of the window. She's just like freaking out all the time because her husband wants to kill her. I don't blame her.
If Jack Nicholson's walking towards you and tells you he's going to bash your brains, then you'd be fucking freaking out too.
Listen, I walk in and I'm like, my husband's been a little unhinged lately. Let me check out its writing. Oh no, he's completely unhinged and I'm stuck in here because of the snow.
He's written so much of the same thing. He just keeps typing the same thing. That's crazy.
You know what I love about that?
What?
Sorry, well, I'm going to go on a tangent about specifically that scene, is that a lesser director would just have all the sheets look exactly the same, but I love how they're all formatted so specifically differently, though. Like, some of them are like in triangles, and some of them are like double spaced, and some of them are single spaced, and some of them are all right justified, and it's like he's adding some flair into
absolutely
his words that he's just repeating over and over, at least some formatting choices.
Yeah, and just on a production design level, my goodness, in the year of 1980 without word processors, that must have taken some poor PA hours, days to do.
It was like, I think I was watching the behind the scenes, the thing that like his daughter Vivian made, like the little documentary. I think she said it was like his secretary or something he made write all those out over like months.
Yeah, it would take a long ass time. The movie's gone through a few phases where the movie came out and everybody didn't like it. And then everybody loved it. And then a lot of people were like, well, I don't like it. I think it was bad because it wasn't good to the novel. Let me tell you what people remember when you talk about The Shining. Let me tell you about the things that first jump into their head. It's that scene with the typing. It's the little girls. None of those appear in the book. The blood in the elevators. Those are the first three things that come into people's head. Him hitting the door with the axe. None of those are in the book. None of them. Not one of them. I went through the whole miniseries. I'm like, where are these effing little girls? Where are they? They're not in there.
So you get more chairs sliding around.
I get woo, the chairs. Oh no, there's no hedge maze. There's just like topiary sculptures. Oh no, they're alive. They're moving around. The hedges. Grass is moving. Not scary.
Sounds like The Happening.
It's more like The Happening than.
Yeah.
It's obviously one of the most iconic films of all time, even if it's less popular now or something. I don't know. Like, what do people think about it now, the general public? I'm not sure. If
you want this more emotional, that there is, it can be moving, the father trying to fight off the madness to protect his son. It's a little more emotionally engaging, perhaps, but it's that makes it harder for it to be scary. Because now you're tacking on to something that's rationalistic within us, that's easier for us to wrap our minds around. Like, oh, the hotel's just haunted by ghosts. All right, fine. And then when you have 4.5 hours to tell your story, I get ad nauseum exposition. Oh, no, the hotel doesn't want you, Dad. It wants me. I have shining powers. The hotel wants to feed on me, blah, blah, blah. When I don't know if he's crazy or not, when I don't know why the hotel is doing what it's doing, when I don't know if there are really ghosts there, or if everybody's gone psychotic from all the craziness happening, that lack of information makes it scarier for us because we have nothing to hold on to anymore, right? Like, we can't rationalize anything away anymore. We don't know. And when we don't know, we become scared as a human race. So the less information we get, the better I think a movie does.
And also not having like a lot of exposition or explanation and setup for the kind of thing too is like when all this shit is hitting the fan. The best part is like none of the characters know if around whatever corner they're about to, cross is like what is there going to be? Is it going to be like twin girls dead in the hallway? Is it going to be an elevator spilling blood out of its doors? What is it? So
yeah, seemingly blood from an elevator has nothing to do with the backstory of the hotel, right? It's just like, if people died here and now we see their ghosts, that's one thing. This blood elevator thing, that's all. And then there's just like Shelley Duvall turning a corner and there's just skeletons are everywhere. None of it makes sense.
There's a creepy old lady in the bathroom.
Old lady in the bathroom. Is she sexy? Is she not? We don't know. It could be anything.
Yeah, a bit of both. Who knows?
Yes, depends what you're into.
That's scary too.
Yeah.
It's
this is awakening something in me. What am I doing? So what about this movie is iconic? Why does it obviously did not do well then, but why is it doing well now? Why is it one of the scarier films? And we all said the movie scares us. What about it is scaring us?
I just like how unsettling the music does a lot for me too. I like the music in here.
Well, yeah, Penderecki will scare anybody.
Yeah, what is that like sound? It sounds like he's like rolling things in a blender, and it's just like ka-ting, ka-ting, ka-ting. I don't know. I don't know much about music, so just like that's where I.
Well, that's some of these
listen.
sounds can be. Sometimes they're just made with random crap, like Penderecki, an experimental post-war musician. A lot of that music being made in reaction to World War II, and like the horrors within it. So it makes sense you would have this kind of more atonal, nonsensical approach to it, right? The world stopped making sense.
The other thing that's scary about this is just a grown man chasing a child around with an axe. That's fucking scary.
Pretty bare bones, huh? Well, what about you, Braden?
For me, it was a couple things. Like, so the first time I saw this, I think I was in like 5th grade. And it was one of those things where I'd always seen, like, it would be on TV around like Halloween time or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would see like bits and pieces of it, and I never really knew what it was. And like I recognized at that point like some of the imagery of like the twins, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And then like I'd seen a lot of, obviously it's referenced all the time in other movies, and so I understood a lot of the imagery from that as well, but never knew the context. And then I can't remember exactly, but watching it like in my room late at night after I got the TV, I would like watch these movies I wasn't supposed to, like The Shining or like Alien or whatever it was. And The Shining was one that I was able to find sort of like at the beginning. So I watched the whole thing, and just seeing, like, I think at that young of an age too, it just heightened all of the unknown elements that we were just talking about, of like these things that don't really make sense from a maybe plot perspective as they unfold. And so for me, in combination with the music and the weird structure with like these titles, dispersed throughout, kind of like tied to jumps in the music, I was just like, what the hell is this movie? And like, again, yeah, it's like your dad's trying to kill you with an axe, and I was like closer to Danny's age then, obviously. And
Yeah.
you're stuck in this place, you can't leave. And being in South Dakota, you know, I've experienced winters where you can't leave your house because the snow drifts get so high. And so it's like a very similar sort of visuals there too in that sense. So yeah, I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. You know, I think it's just like the way that none of the scariest imagery is explained ever as a child. You're like, well, I don't really understand, but I don't want to ever see anything like that, like going around a corner in a hotel next time I'm there.
When did you kind of first come across The Shining, and what were your first thoughts?
Oh, man. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it had to be on like AMC or something where I was like watching like an edited version. I think I just ended up renting it and just being like, oh, so this is the scariest movie I've ever seen now.
Yeah.
And I was probably pretty young, probably like 12 or 13. That's when I first started like getting into horror movies.
Yeah, I saw this one pretty early too. I think I was also in elementary school because my mother just loved this movie. And anytime it was on TV, as she's flipping through the channels, she'd just put it on. So I too also saw it just in random chunks throughout. It's almost more disconcerting when you have no context. You're just catching a scene here or there and just randomly appearing. I was actually, in middle school, giant Stephen King fan. Huge.
Oh, wow.
Read all of his books, you know, that were out at the time, in between 6th and 8th grade. I will tell you, though, having seen and read many things involving Stephen King, not a scary guy. Not scary. Book, not scary. Movie, very scary. Why?
Yeah.
I come from this Tarkovsky school. So time in a film, I think, is very important. And I think letting a lot of these moments breathe and letting moments just linger, and we just watching Jack throw a ball against the wall, that says so much right there. This conversation happening between, you know, like that, there's that scene with the bat, or I wish it's with the bat. That scene's actually very long. This long sidewinding thing as they go through. It's just, you know, one on her, a camera on him. And they're just talking, but the subtext of it is what's terrifying. Where in the novel and in the miniseries, it's a lot more like on the nose. When she's like, you're crazy, you know, because she's standing up for herself, which is good, but not scary because I don't feel like she's overmatched by him, you know?
Yeah.
I think her being a weaker character in the movie version makes him look a lot more threatening, which is what you want in your scary movie. That scene in the bathroom between him and the old caretaker, the Grady character, that's a very long scene. What was that, 8 minutes? It's long. It would not be allowed to exist in 2023. That is an underrated scary scene. It just, his reaction is weird. Jack Nicholson is not reacting the way we'd expect to realizing that this man is the former caretaker who murdered his family. He's almost like confronting him. He's like, I know you. You killed your family. And the guy's like, no, I didn't. And Jack's like, yes, you did, you asshole. You killed your whole family. Why you don't provoke the ghost axe murderer, Jack Nicholson.
I love the performance in that because he's like annoyed that he's not telling him.
Yeah.
So I love the questions he's asking. Like the performance is like he's making all these weird sort of physical movements as he's asking, like, oh, so where's your wife?
Yeah.
Do you have any kids? And he's like clearly trying to like poke this guy, this ghost, basically.
He should be terrified, and he's not. He's like a little trepidatious, but his reaction to it is to confront it, which is in line with the character. So that's a smart thing to do, but it also is unnerving for us because you're like, he's not behaving the way a normal person would in this, in theory, non-scary situation. Well, visually non-scary, but intellectually very scary. And then suddenly there's a tone shift in the middle of it. And both of them seem to be on a wavelength, and we have missed that jump. And some people might argue, no motivation there. And I say, that makes it scarier. Because I believe it, based on behavior we've seen before. I believe it because we are sort of expecting it to happen anyway. The fact that it just happens makes it scarier because, again, we have a lack of reasoning here. So I believe it, but you haven't connected the dots for me, so I'm scared. And the novel, he starts to get possessed by the hotel because he finds the scrapbook. And they made the scrapbook scene, but they didn't include it in the movie. And I think I don't need a reason why suddenly he goes insane, because as we've discussed, he clearly was holding on by a thread and just ran out of the energy, locked in this hotel with cabin fever, to hold on to it. So I don't need a motivation. It was always on the precipice. The family knows it. It's why they're terrified all the time.
I mean,
yeah, well, I was going to say the other great thing about the scene in the bathroom is like he's already kind of pals with the ghosts, the ones that are giving this alcohol. And then it's kind of this thing like, you know, if you're upset about something or mad at someone, you go to a friend and you are looking for validation from them. Be like, yeah, you're right to be mad at that person. It's like, that's what he's looking for. That's why he's asking. He's like, okay, you're the guy who killed his family. And then he's like, you know, they were sort of out of line. So then I corrected them. And then that's like his okay from the ghost. Like, you know, I've been wanting to kill my family too. You're right. I should do that. I should correct them myself. And then he, you know, goes off and gets the axe and everything. So that's why it's scary too, is like, he's already thinking it. He just needs someone to be like, yeah, go for it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I like that, that second ballroom scene where he goes in and now it's full of people. And now his wallet somehow has money. So now he's like, all right. And the most suspicious thing out of all of this is that the bartender won't take his money.
That he won't tell him who's paying for it.
Yeah, it's just like, well, wait a minute here. I can take a room full of people that shouldn't be here and alcohol that clearly isn't here and my magic money. But how dare you give me drinks for free, sir? What do you think I am, an idiot?
It was great. There's all these small things with him that or make it like funny too.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot
or
of
even
comedy in this.
Well, even the first conversation he has with the bartender, and then Shelley Duvall comes in, and so she's like, "Jack, there's somebody else in the hotel." And he, having just talked with somebody else, looks at her and goes, "What are you, insane?"
There's more humor in this than I think people let on too.
People criticize the lack of emotionality, and I've already said that that's strong, but I think that serves Kubrick really well here because there's no warm, fuzzy feelings to be had. You're just like fucked. He's just like strands you in the hotel and he's like, good luck, chuds. And he runs out of there. Kubrick, you jerk. I think the other thing is what might be continuity issues. And I'm not here to debate whether or not they were intentional, though I think that they were. But the fact that the geography of this hotel is always shifting, subtly, uncalled, the fact that the carpeting layout can flip in between shots within a scene, the fact that people go in one room and then when they come out, the outline is slightly different. The hotel architecture is always shifting, and the movie's not actively trying to draw attention to it, but we're subconsciously now feeling unsafe because we cannot take grasp of the space that we're in, even something as simple as geography. I think the whole point of having these really long takes of them touring through the hotel, of the kid riding the big wheel around, is to make us think we know the geography so that later on when it's shifting it to us within a scene, we go, wait a minute, what? We don't even realize. Our body's like, I feel uncomfortable here because this doesn't make sense.
One scene in particular that I really enjoy is that shot where he's like, Shelley Duvall brings him breakfast in bed, and it's like we're seeing it, but we're watching it from the mirror perspective. And then it's like, it kind of like somehow you get out of the mirror though, and then you're with Jack. And I love how that shot is composed. And it's also just very unsettling how it's like. Yeah,
a lot of scenes when Jack Nicholson's interacting with ghosts involve mirrors or reflective surfaces. The bar, the bathroom, even the door in the storeroom he's locked in has this reflective kind of surface to it. Like, it's a great way of, like, is Jack confronting his own psyche? Or it's just like this little, like, X thing in The Departed. Like, it's just giving us an unconscious clue that nonsense is going on, but it's not telling us too much. It's a very visually minded movie, obviously, from a talented director. And I think a lot of our horror films these days don't do this as well. What are things that this movie's doing well that current horror films are struggling with?
Oh, I could go into that for a
long time. Let's do it.
Go.
Well, the biggest thing is, and something that like everyone sort of caught on to since then, is like jump scares and how lazy they've become. I think there can be effective jump scares, and then I think they're very lazy ones. I recently saw, well, not recently, whenever it came out, Smile.
Oh, yes.
That was just like 2 hours of just the laziest jump scares I've probably ever seen. And like the one or two good ones were given away in the trailer. So then it's like
Yes.
they didn't really work. And the ones that weren't were all the shitty ones that you know are going to happen. So like that, I think, is one of the biggest things that The Shining, you know, avoids. There aren't really jump scares. It's a lot of tension and mood and scary situations and characters who are in these really horrifying scenarios. And so then when there are these things close to jump scares, like when he pops around that column with the axe and kills Scav Crothers, right? Like it's not punctuated necessarily in a way a modern jump scare would happen, but it's still very surprising, even though you know he's there.
Well, yeah, I think the thing about jump scares a lot in our movies, it's a great way to like threaten the protagonists of these modern films without doing anything to them. This is a jump scare, but then also a murder. Like it just keeps going. It reaches an inevitable conclusion, and then we have to like hang there and watch him scream, them both screaming at each other as one of them is dying. There's an actual threat to the scare.
Is that when we get the blood out of the elevator? Is that when that happens? Or is that later?
That's later.
I think so. Okay. Shelley Duvall sees it.
Oh, yeah. She sees the
as she's running around. But she sees other things, too, that should, like, scare us. But it's like a dude in a dog costume giving a blowjob. And then, like, a guy
Is it a dog or a bear?
I don't know. It's okay. And then a guy being like, great party. And they're not like scary on their own, but with everything going on, we're just like, okay, time to go. Get out of there, Wendy.
And I think the other great example is when the red rum reveal happens to Wendy, but it's not the fact that, you know, when we cut and see it written out in the mirror, so we see this as murder, it's the random snap zoom onto her face beforehand that's sort of the scare, because then you're like, what the fuck is going on that we're not looking at right
she
now?
wakes up, she's like, oh my god, my kid's standing over my bed with a knife above me. My husband's already tried to kill me.
Exactly. And then the camera just zooms right into her face and she looks like horrified, and you're like, what the fuck? And like, that's what the scare is in that. And so like, that's another thing that, you know, it's not the traditional jump scare or something like jumps out at you or anything. It's just like the camera, it's mainly, you know, it's just a zoom, and that's what sort of catches you off guard.
One of the greatest special effects of the whole movie is Shelley Duvall's like frightened face.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah, like in the novel too,
easy.
Jack is, Tone, Jesus. What's the kid's name? Danny?
Danny.
Danny is also a little older, and then like a lot more smarter and a lot more talented in his shining gear. Even that kid is a lot more like competent, and I don't know, like making both of these much weaker people, I think, is not a bad move.
They're weak, but they're not dumb, which I think is an important distinction.
Yes.
And that's another thing is like when you're watching a lot of horror films these days, the protagonists are often very dumb and making very dumb choices.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, like she's doing all the right things. She locks him in the free. Every other movie, she would hit him with the baseball bat, drop the baseball bat, and run away.
Hide somewhere.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
just go hide.
like 2 feet away or something, right? In a closet that she can't escape from. But she locks him in.
She's like, I better get this knife just in case.
Yep. And, you know, at that point, she should feel pretty secure, because how would he, with, you know, reason, get out of that? So, and then, again, like the bathroom, she tries the window, gets the kid out, realizes she can't leave, gets in the corner, so he can't just, like, bust the door down and trap her there. And, she's, like, defending herself and doing things to, you know, keep her and her son alive. So I don't think that weak necessarily is a bad thing when they're not dumb. If they're weak and dumb, I think then it would be more of a legitimate problem.
And even another underrated scary scene is Jack has the nightmare, and she comes in and she's like, what's going on? And then just ominously Danny walks in via the front of the camera, and so we don't know what's going on over there. We want to know. And she runs over. She's like, what's going on? And we're not close enough to Danny to see what's wrong. And then she just like turns her head, and immediately we know she's accusing him. Very smart move there to be like, there's only 2 people here. My son is abused. You've abused my son before. It's probably you. How dare you? And she like runs away with it. Like that's another smart thing to do. Obviously, it turns out to be wrong. There's something frightening about her accusations and Jack's kind of like helpless stupor face. He's like, what the fuck's going on here? I don't know.
Yeah.
This family falling apart is scary as they're all kind of turning on each other.
Yeah, you don't know who to trust.
Yeah, and Jack has this paranoia of like he thinks his son likes his mother more than him, and so like they're both gaining up against him. Like it's somewhat justified in his weird male psyche, and it's scarier. It's scarier. Scary movie. Joe, what are modern horror films failing to do that The Shining does well?
Have Jack Nicholson in your movie?
Yeah.
Or Shelley Duvall? Like I said, she's an easy special effect with her face. You don't have everything's relied way too heavily either on special effects or like jump scares or even lesser than that, like just like this like new slow horror trend, like is what I'm calling it, which you like Skinamarink.
Oh, I love Skinamarink.
I don't even know when we want to get
Give
into
me
that.
Skinamarink.
Oh, I knew you. I saw stills from that, Patrick. Sorry, quick side tangent. I saw stills. I was like, I don't know if that movie's going to be good or not, but I know Patrick at least is going to love the look of that movie because it's all this has this lo-fi, interesting.
I
color
do love
palette,
some
weird
lo-fi.
framing.
Yeah, but the texture is great. It's really unnerving, right? That's what this movie's doing well. This is a slow horror, I would say, Joe.
Oh, definitely. This is This is my kind of slow horror, though, where there's a narrative. I'm gonna give Skinamarink another chance.
Yeah, there's a tough balance where you don't want too strong of a narrative because then it's too easy to hang your hat on something.
Yes.
But like this movie, here's the narrative: 3 people are in a hotel, and your father is an alcoholic. Great. That's it. That's all I don't need anything else. Is it an ancient Indian burial ground? Doesn't matter. Are there really ghosts? Doesn't matter. Why do the ghosts want... It doesn't matter. We don't need any of that.
Yeah, we really don't even get... I feel like it's an hour and a half before you get any ghost stuff, right?
Probably.
The interview is almost a half hour, the whole interview thing.
Having watched this and the sequel and the miniseries, somehow, despite them all being, the sequel's the same length of this and the miniseries obviously 2 hours longer, this one felt the fastest. It just is breezing through. I watched this one last too. I'm like, wow, so refreshing. We're just going here. I love this. Woo!
Yeah, Danny is experiencing the ghost stuff earlier on because he's already seeing the girls in the elevator and everything.
Oh,
But yeah, for the other two, it's probably like an hour in almost.
Yeah, and the first time we see the girls in real time, other people are still in the hotel. Like the parents are on a tour, people are leaving, staff is leaving, so they could just be here and okay, weird hotel. Get out of here, creepy girl. Oh no, you're still here. Ah.
The other thing, too, that I think that modern horror films are doing is that The Shining isn't doing. Again, it's like what we were talking about with the explaining and exposition, where a lot of them now dedicate so much time to explaining what's going on or trying to explain what's going on in order to have there be a twist where that's not actually what's going on. Yeah, these
fucking twists, man.
But it's just all of this explaining being done all the time, and it doesn't matter if it's actually right or not. It's just people explaining what we're watching, and it's so frustrating and annoying. Even what is it? Sinister, I did like 3/4 of that movie, and then Lee Expert comes in and is like, you've got a bagoogle problem. And instantly all tension's gone from the film, because now we know everything, and now I just got to see this inevitable third act conclusion. You took away the magic of the film when you put a stamp on what the problem was. Yeah, ancient demon. Ancient demon that looks like modern rocker. That's what you got. Yeah, it's of course. I love that. I think that movie's really underrated in terms of the horror sort of. Yeah, that movie was working really, really well. Right up until.
You showed me the lawnmower scene.
Yeah.
All of that found footage stuff or videos he finds are incredible. It's so well done.
The movie In the Ring, the little movie that you watch and die to.
Oh, yeah.
Terrifying film. Terrifying 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Rest of the film, meh.
Agreed.
What are some films that you think work well as horror films that you've seen?
Barbarian.
Yeah, Barbarian. Okay.
Yeah, that's a recent one that worked really well.
Yeah.
Especially with the structure of the story.
I think Barbarian, really fun, interesting film. I don't find it particularly scary.
There's some scary parts.
The descent into the basement, I think, is pretty tense.
I think it's unsettling. I
and
like
that's another one where, once you kind of figure out what's going on, now you're just kind of full-on thriller and less horror stuff is happening.
Yeah, the first half is more horror. The second half is more sort of gore fest type thing. But it knows that. And I think getting there is really great. The setup with the trailer that they gave us before anyone saw the movie. The trailer is doing great work. Yeah. Great work. The strong trailer game, finally, at long last. And I'm very pleased with the marketing department for not being oh, no, we have to show that there's a monster or something like that. It's thank God for once marketing didn't ruin everything.
I know, they never revealed Justin Long.
Yeah. Well, they did, though.
They did?
Yeah, so there was a wave of trailers right before the release where suddenly it made it seem like Justin Long was the main character. And I thought,
oh, I didn't see
Justin
those.
Long, when did you get into this movie?
I only saw the main one, I think, with Skarsgård.
And then I go and see the movie, and the 40 minutes there's no Justin Long, and I go, wasn't How does Justin Long fit into this?
Yeah, and then it's like Ricky Tikki Tavi, and Donovan comes on.
Yeah, the trailer smartly circumventing a lot of my expectations in general of how the plot itself would go. I'm just like, well, you've got Bill Skarsgård here. Obviously, he's going to be doing creepy shenanigans stuff. And then that never really happened. So, like, it was a smart trailer. Way to go. Yeah, what other... It doesn't even have to be a movie you've seen in the theater recently, but what movies do you think are in The Shining's pantheon of great horror films?
I have a whole list of things here.
Great. I'm glad you came prepared.
No, try and be prepared
I
sometimes.
have some.
So I'll just go off like a couple of the main ones. Like I love The Thing, different type of horror film, but I think has a lot of great sequences that are similar in terms of like tension.
Yeah.
Like the scene where they're testing the blood is so
this
good.
great, and this like suspicion between people enclosed somewhere. Like I think that's right, a powder keg ready to go off.
Yep. Yeah, so I love that one. Love the first Alien movie. I think that's great. Hereditary is a more recent one. I think worked really well on a lot of levels.
I agree.
28 Days Later.
More
More of a zombie type thing there, but I love the look of that film. Lo-fi.
Great texture.
Have you seen that? Yeah. I bet you love the
I
texture.
saw it when it came out in the theater because I am an old man.
Oh, wow, you were young.
I was young. Yeah.
The Conjuring. I think I've talked on this podcast about The Conjuring before. I love that. I think that's
Love The Conjuring.
I think that's a great example of jump scares and scares that have like real setup and real payoffs, and they're like really well crafted as opposed to the like, oh, a random friend jumps out at your window when you're sitting in a car scared that everyone does all the time. And then a couple other
also,
ones.
like, strong character work in that. I love the Conjuring.
Yeah, and it's not where like no one dies, which The Shining also another strength that is like one person die or two people die, but
That film now would be like we're putting 8 people in this hotel room and we're gonna like kill
we
them
don't
off
know
one
who's
by
killing
one.
them, and yeah, they're getting axed in the back, and
Yeah,
it's like
the
whole
fact
thing.
that you only have 3 characters and you can't really kill any of them until you have one guy show up at the end with the magic escape vehicle forces you to do things more creatively, and that's great. It's awesome. We're getting like an Ibsen play here.
Couple other ones. Green Room, I think is a fun movie. The Last Exorcism, I think is underrated. Great texture on that one too.
Last Exorcism. I've nobody has ever discussed that film before. Way to go, Braden.
Have you seen?
I have seen it, yeah, but no one has ever remembered or talked about it since it came out.
I think it
haven't seen
has
it.
a lot of good stuff in it, and I think it actually works well as like a found footage situation. Like it takes advantage of it where a lot of those similar ones don't. The Empty Man, another more recent one that kind of flew under the radar.
Well, that one I haven't even heard of, but I'll check that
That's
one out.
good. That's David Fincher's, like, what is it?
Yeah, his BTS guy, his documentary guy. So his name is David Pryor, and he did all of the sort of behind the scenes looks for a bunch of Fincher's films. And then he made a short film called like AM 1300 or something like that. And so after that short film, he was able to make The Empty Man, which no one saw in the middle of the pandemic. It was in theaters for like a week. I'm pretty sure 2 people saw it. But then when it came out on streaming later, it kind of gained some traction. So that has,
I really like that
it's
one.
really well done. Story-wise, I don't think it sustains itself quite all the way. It's a bit long, but there's good stuff in it. I'd recommend it, Patrick, as a fellow horror fan.
It is long.
And then Sinister, which we already talked about. Those are some just sort of general ones that pop into my head.
All right, what have you got, Joe?
What about Malignant?
Love Malignant too. That's a fun one.
So like Malignant and
bonkers.
like Green Room, those are movies that are very thriller. Green Room I was already sucked into and I did like it. But I wouldn't say I was scared throughout the movie. I wasn't uncomfortable and wanting to get out of my skin.
It fits,
during
I
the
guess,
movie.
it's like considered in the horror genre.
Yeah,
but
I
it's a
can
different
get
type
why
of-
people did it, but in my mind that's some like, okay, very good thriller film.
I forget how short it is, too. It's like 85 minutes long.
I know, but
It's so
it
short.
just goes on. Like, I don't know. It goes on in a good way. You're just like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, it's like Dread. It's like,
I've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The original, right?
Yeah,
Or are you talking about the Michael Bay produced remake?
They've yet to
I
make
like that one, but I'm just saying.
They've yet to make a good one since like the third one. The ones without Toby Hooper are obviously not great. They're just like, we'll just kill
Did you
people
ever see
alive.
the one with McConaughey and Zellweger? It's like impossible.
I've given
to
up
find
on new. I know I watched the one on Netflix because I just threw it on one
That was
day.
horrendous.
Sucked.
Oh,
The
yeah,
one that
that
came out
one's
like last
awful.
year.
Yeah, and I'm just like, don't raise my money for this, Netflix, you assholes. I don't want this. Charge me less and don't make this. That's fine.
Yeah, they were going to cancel Leatherface in that one. Do you remember that? He goes on. Leatherface gets on the bus, and they're all like putting up their phones to like, and they're like, "We're gonna cancel
They're
you."
like, oh yeah. Look at our commentary. Oh, we're so biting. I'm gonna die on this hill. Blair Witch Project, terrifying film.
Oh, you're crazy for thinking
I would like
that's scary.
more Blair Witch Projects.
I
out
love
there.
that movie.
It Follows. I think scary
Great,
movie.
excellent.
The Witch, the Vavitch. I think
Yeah, The Witch.
pretty
Yeah,
scary
shit.
movie.
I
Again,
like The
until
Witch.
the very end when they're like, yeah, witchcraft the whole time. And I go, no, you were doing the Shining thing. Is she crazy or did she do this of her own accord? Or
when she's playing peekaboo with the baby and the baby's gone is awesome.
yeah,
Such a
you're like,
great scene.
First 3 minutes.
They're like, nope, actually Satan. And I go, don't take the... I think when you take the onus off of people's murderous intents, you kind of ruin some of the fun there. You know, you take away our...
It was better when it was the fact that they were like
Accountability.
repressed Puritans.
Yeah. Like
and
a lot
that
of...
was the scary part again that got isolated out and then it's like the devil and a
is
goat. or
like,
whatever.
no, actual witches. And I'm like, come on, man, we were so close. The first 30 minutes of Black Phone, I thought, very scary. I'm into this.
Yeah, I love the first
like
30
that
minutes of
movie.
Black Phone.
And then they're like, a plot. And I'm going, you fuckers. You
He
had
gets
this.
captured in the basement and then it starts like setting these things up. I'm just like, it's just like a thing. Like,
I know it was lame, but I still liked it.
Movies that I thought were very visually frightening, if not actually frightening in general. Suspiria, the old one. Pretty much any Argento film. He did crazy visuals and they all worked really well.
And the Guadagnino one is a crazy body horror shit.
Yeah.
I love it.
Body horror is more like gross, kind of gory sort of things. Repulsion,
It's so gross.
I think pretty scary.
I love that.
Joe, I'm going to get this hot take off quick. I know you're going to have to leave us pretty shortly. Braden and I will go on for a little bit. We'll discuss Dr. Sleep. But I wanted to say this while you're still on the air to hear it. Here's my hot take on The Shining. The Shining is Kubrick's Southland Tales. Compared to his other
adapted
films, we talked about this before, Joe, where like Barry Lyndon is like his perfect film. That doesn't mean it's a
I
good
love that
film.
movie.
It doesn't mean it's like his best film. It's just the film he did perfectly. He just made no mistakes with that film on a craft, technical, grammar level. And after that, it seems to me that he has tried to do something very different afterwards. And so this, right, not Full Metal Jacket. What is it?
That's it.
Is
That's
it?
after
Okay.
the-
Platoon maybe is what I confuse it with. Full Metal Jacket and then Eyes Wide Shut. Very messy films. Like, they're very tonally different. They're doing a lot. He's trying to do a new type of filmmaking here. And I think this film, if on a technical level, on a craft level, has a lot of things wrong with it. You know, the continuity errors, the messiness of it, the weird genre shifts occasionally. But I think all the acting, the broader acting style, but I think all the things that are wrong with it, they all kind of help it to work. And this film could have easily, a lot of audiences left the theater and they're like, this film isn't as good as his other films. And technically it's true. But I think it lingered a lot more than a lot of his other films because of these messy imperfections. And it makes it a lot stronger than it would have been had it been, quote unquote, better made. Does that make sense,
Yeah,
Joe?
absolutely. I would say the only other film that has lingered maybe just as much or maybe a little more is 2001.
Yeah, well, I think that helps too because, again, he was making a new type of film compared to Spartacus and Fear and Loathing and The Killers. And what was coming out at the time? Dr. Dolittle, and like it was the shitty era of
It's a mad world or something
filmmaking.
like that.
Yeah, like the 60s were just like hanging on to the 50s for dear life. And they're like, old Hollywood, we're the golden age.
It's
And
the year before
Kubrick's
Bonnie and Clyde.
Fuck you. Last 30 minutes of this movie, we're in a weird room. The end. See you guys.
Space babies.
Yeah, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is this? What is that? But that movie, very technically sound, very well crafted, despite its odd structure. I think it just is like a well-made, sterile clinical house. The Shining, not a sterile, just rough edges all around it, shoddy craftsmanship seen everywhere. And I think it makes it creepier. I think it makes it scarier. I think it makes it more grounded. I think it makes it textured. It just worked better than it might have been had he made this film before Barry Lyndon. There you go. Southland Tales.
Thank you.
A movie I can't get Braden to watch.
I will,
Really?
yeah, you've been trying to do that for like 2 years
When
now.
I come over and watch Godzilla, we will also watch Southland Tales.
Yeah, a double
as the palate
feature.
cleanser.
Gareth Edwards Godzilla
Yeah.
followed with Southland Tales. A double feature that's never been done in history.
I think you should definitely see the theatrical version first, and then if you like it, then watch the cons cut.
Do you agree, Patrick? Is that
I don't
the
know.
order of operations?
I think I watched both Khan's cuts. I think I watched Khan's cut both times accidentally, so.
Oh, really?
I think so.
It's just a lot of extra details that you don't have in with the theatrical cut, and it helps it a lot more to understand it, I feel like.
Yeah, I know, both movies where we don't fully know everything that's going on, and it sort of helps the overall final product.
Yes.
I promise I will watch it someday.
Oh, well, but I guess quickly before, are you going to leave right now, Joe?
I have a minute.
All right, so some conspiracy theories that The Shining has conjured, or like some hidden meanings people have professed. The Shining might be the genocide of Native Americans. That one's pretty in there, I think. I think that's a fair one to guess. The horrors of the bureaucracy within Nazi Germany. Danny wants to kill his father. An apology for faking the moon landing, and it itself is a horror
because
of
of the
parody
sweater?
films.
Jesus.
When I was watching Room 237, I was just so interested in how these people came to these conclusions, and there's almost like nothing that they have actually
Like, they give you a couple of things, but then you go, how does it make sense? But I get what they're latching onto, right? What's interesting about this film is how much he deviated from the book, and sometimes needlessly, like changing the color of the car, and then the documentary points this out, then putting the correct vehicle in a car accident is almost like Hewitt being like, fuck you.
Yeah, I like that observation a lot.
Yeah,
That was a good
and
one.
what we forget is, what it's easy to forget, is that at the time, Stephen King wasn't Stephen King. In 1980, he'd written 5 books. They were bestsellers, but everybody's got a bunch of bestsellers. Like, that's not hard to
he was
do.
nowhere
He'd
near
only had
prolific.
2 movie adaptations. This is the second one.
Carrie!
Carrie was the other
Another
one.
phenomenal movie by another great auteur.
Yeah, it helps when your Stephen King adaptations are directed by good directors. Who would have thought?
Yeah, De Palma and Kubrick back to back.
Shocked. I'm shocked.
And then it became a string of like random TV directors that no one...
just race to the IP because like, these movies have been doing well. Let's do any Stephen King story. What if we do it well? No. Let's just do them. Doesn't matter if they're well. And I've seen a lot of them. They're not done well. They're not done well. Or they're like super... Like Salem's Lot is technically an okay TV miniseries. Twice.
You've seen that?
Twice.
Jesus.
But the problem is that book's kind of like silly. You know, it's like vampires, doing vampire stuff.
Yeah.
So this one, it's like, girl being bullied at school, has a crazy mother. Boy has a crazy father, locked in a hotel with him. Like, both just scary premises without being silly, spooky vampire stuff. My favorite Stephen King book is actually one that nobody really remembers. It's called Rose Matter. There's no supernatural elements in theory. It's just like domestic abuse. Like, a woman's married to a police officer, so when he beats her up, she has no one to go to for help.
Yeah, great premise again. That's grounded and rooted in real...
That's terrifying. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. There's, like, perhaps some supernatural stuff, but you don't know if she's crazy or not. Another great use, but nobody really likes the book. Nobody's ever heard of it because it's, I don't know, it doesn't have monsters in it.
Well, maybe you should adapt it.
Maybe I should adapt it.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think anyone
a
has
good
the
idea,
rights.
actually. You should do that.
All right, Joe's got to go. Let's say goodbye to Joe. Brady and I will wrap up here. Thanks
All right.
for stopping
Bye,
by,
Joe.
Thanks,
Joe.
guys.
We're just going to talk about the remake, so whatever.
See you later. Bye.
Though, you know, Braden, the interesting thing the 237 did bring up about the Danny trying to kill his father is the unlocking of the door. Because that is the one supernatural thing in the movie that happens that you can't explain away. Mm-hmm. So, like, that one's interesting, especially since then we cut to him and he's in the room and he's going, like, he's writing murder on the door and he's got the knife in hand. Like, there might be some subconscious thing there. Joe bringing up if it's a dog or a bear, that guy in the costume is interesting, too. In the novel and the book, it's a guy in a wolf mask, so maybe it was meant to be a dog of some sort. But the bear is interesting because isn't he on a bear? Doesn't he have a bear in his bedroom? Doesn't Danny have a bear in his bedroom in the beginning of the film?
I don't remember exactly. He has a lot of shit in his bedroom.
Yeah, I know. I think like when he's recuperating on the bed and the doctor's there's like a big giant stuffed bear he's kind of using as a pillow.
Oh, gotcha.
And so that this
Right.
bear is giving fellatio to this guy might imply like this sexual abuse that might have happened too. And so Danny would obviously want to kill him then too. Like, so there is something to that theory that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there are a few. The one that really was dumb, I thought, was like the Minotaur one with the ski poster. I was like, you are reading so much into that, and that is the only thing that's supporting that idea. And like, sure, the maze, I guess, but that's it.
Kubrick's like going to his his art department. He's like, find me a poster of a guy skiing that looks like he's a minotaur. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah, and as a person that's not into symbolism in film on that level, because it's too intellectual, I'm just like, that's not even how it works when they do it wrong. Like, what's going on here? All right, so Dr. Sleep, you like it.
I do like it.
Tell me why you like it.
I think it's a good blend of bringing in some of the ideas that King had in the book, which I don't really care about as much. But like, if you have to balance the two, like you were saying earlier, one basically didn't care about the book at all. And, the sequel, to some sense, is caring about the book and then also caring about the original film that came before it. And I think it does strike a good balance while maintaining sort of what the original film was about and tracking sort of what happened to Danny afterwards and his journey with alcoholism and how he's been fighting that and suppressing The Shining through that. And so I thought that was effective. And then when we do in the latter half, return to the hotel, I don't know, I was probably just because I'm such a fan of the original movie. I just love seeing that on the big screen again with like the music and everything. Yeah,
I will tell you, when that moment happens, when she's like, where are we going? He's like, that scary place I was telling you about, we're going there because fuck her. And then like when the ghosts eat her, I'm like, yeah, fuck you, bitch. Like that movie gets me energized, but like that's not the emotion I want to have in my sequel to this very successful horror film. And watching it again, I was just like, yeah, it does feel like this Overlook stuff is kind of crowbarred in there. But then I go, well, of course it is. Because at the end of The Shining, the Overlook is burned down and it doesn't exist anymore. And then I thought, when he wrote the book, did he just put it back in after complaining about how much he hates that movie? No, it turns out the Overlook's not in the book either. So, of course, this thing's crowbarred in. They added it. They made it happen. They said, well, what if we put it in there? Well, I just think it comes in way too late. But I don't know. I didn't see the 3-hour version. I only saw the 2.5-hour version. Maybe if it is an extra half hour of Overlook. But it feels like for so much, it's this other movie. And then right at the end, we're gonna do all this other stuff. And if that had come in earlier, if it were more split evenly, or if there were less prevalence given to this new girl and to the woman in the hat, whatever her name is.
Rose the Hat.
Rose the Hat. Barry the Crow and something Snakebite and Silent Dude.
Silent Dude.
Grandpa Flick. I hope that wasn't his nickname the whole time. At some point, he wasn't a grandpa, I presume. And even in the book, too, when I looked it up, it's just like, it's all about superhero shining battles. And I go, I don't want that in here. But I liked the idea, like, they're going back to all these callbacks and they're recreating a lot of these shots, but now Danny is the one in the Jack role. I wanted more of this generational abuse. I wanted more of an exploration in that. And The Shining got to do a lot of those things and make them creepy because it was less focused on the plot. It didn't really matter what was happening. It was just like, we put 3 people in a room and we're watching them slowly degrade. Where this one is just like, well, these people are hunting these other people and they want to eat the food and they need it so they can live forever. And this one has a shining and Tony was in fact this thing. And like, it's too much. There's a lot of explanation going on so the plot can happen so that they can then find them and trick them and do all these shenanigans. Mm-hmm. And it's too busy.
The Rosa Hat side of things is more plot driven. I think everything though before they encounter each other though is more of that generational trauma and abuse. So that we're seeing when we're with Danny. And that's the majority of the film.
His pre-story, I go great. At the end, when he's chasing her, I go interesting, but it feels like we're a new movie now. It doesn't feel super balanced because he had to make that up. And then it just ends the way The Shining did in the book anyway. So if you wanted to end it like the reason why it works in the book version is because you set it up the whole movie. You didn't go on this Rose the Hat detour.
No, I definitely get your complaints with that. I just think that, what they did with Danny made a lot of sense coming off of The Shining, and then take or leave some of the more, like supernatural whatever with Rosa Hat, who I think is great. But I mean, I like what they do with that. I don't care about her, the rest of her troupe or whatever. Yeah,
these hipster circus freaks.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they get to the Overlook, I enjoy that showdown and sort of weaponizing that trauma that he has against her.
And there's a lot of it where she just assumes the hedges is the girl's mind. And I'm just like, what a great metaphor for like culture these days. Like it just presumes nothing happened before 20 years ago. Like obviously it can't be this old dude, right?
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's what's great too is like she's walking through the hotel, sees these things, and it's like, whatever, like, I've seen stuff like this, but she doesn't know what Danny's gone through.
Yeah, let's have a fun time here.
And he has a deeper understanding of what
Yeah, and she's like, oh, looks like you've
on.
had some trauma. And he goes, oh, you just wait.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, those are cool and maybe even badass. But again, I don't want that in a horror film.
Sure.
And so when the hotel's the one possessing him, like, I'm less scared.
Mm-hmm.
You have this alcoholic guy, and basically after 30 minutes, he seems like he's got it pretty well licked, except for one moment when we get to the third act, when you have to have that moment anyway. And then he's just like, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to drink out of you bottle. But if the whole time he is struggling with it while trying to help her, even if it didn't have this exit threat of these people, even if it was just her, like maybe her powers were hard to manifest and like they were threatening to destroy her family and herself, like rip her apart, they were so strong. So he's got to maintain that while this alcoholism, while feeling like he's incapable of helping her. And then for some reason they have to go to the Overlook Hotel and all that like overwhelms him. Taking the culpability away from him and making his fight against alcoholism so easy takes away a lot of the threat. And I think I would have liked that kind of movie more.
Yeah, I hear you. Another thing I think that was interesting, though, that the film was doing, I don't know how intentional this was, but there are certain moments in that film when you're like, is actually the little girl the one who is the evil one here? Is she on like the wrong path? Like, I thought that was interesting. They didn't explore it that much, but there were moments I was like, oh, Rosa Hatch, she's not great, but is the actual problem here this girl that he's trying to help?
Yeah, yeah, you could have done something cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like what X-Men 3 was about, but badly.
Oh, yeah. Well, fuck that movie.
Yeah, you could do something like that, maybe. I don't know. There are things we could have done here.
Yeah. There's another movie. I want to go back to other horror films that we like and don't like.
I go to way too many horror films. I watch too many horror films, presuming they're going to be bad, just in case they're not. Like, I thought Skinamarink was going to be bad. And then I go like, oh, I'm actually terrified here. Yeah. And I don't know, I just watched one earlier in the week, like Yellow Brick Road. I go, this is probably dumb, but if it hits, it's going to be good. And then it didn't hit.
Yeah.
It looked like it was going to hit for a tiny bit, and then it didn't.
That's the eternal problem. That's why I don't love... Well, I enjoy horror films, but I was never like, oh, this is my genre or anything. I think a lot of what I've watched has stemmed from, why do some of them work and why do some of them not work? And I think a lot of them, in a lot of ways, the ones that do and don't work are still similar. They have a lot of the same types of things being set up in them and types of thematic things in them, or some of them are just so awful, though, right? And so I watched so many to try and figure out like what it is specifically about some of the good ones, because there's so few. Yeah,
and I think we're trained. Like, I think The Shining fails immediately upon its release, because at that point, like, slashers are now the rising horror genre. I think people were expecting to get a slasher. They're like, body counts will be high and things will be gory, and they didn't get it, and they would just presume, well, then I'm not scared. But obviously, this has lasted a lot more than a lot of horror films have, 45 years later almost. So it can be scary to try to do something that might have a longer impact, because if it comes out and everybody's like, this wasn't scary, immediately, like, you can't make another movie. It's great that in 20 years, everybody's like, yeah, very scary, but by then you're dead because you couldn't feed yourself because you didn't make any movies.
Yeah, because you're in jail.
Yeah, so you're in jail for tax fraud or something. I don't know. This is a puzzle I've been trying to crack. Two things happened around, like, 2006. I saw The Ring, and then I saw Paranormal Activity. Mm-hmm. And Paranormal Activity, everybody said was super scary, not scary. Dumb. Mm-hmm. The Ring, everybody said was scary, and only the mini movie was scary. So I go, okay, I know what this is scary. So why isn't? And ever since then, I've been trying to solve this puzzle, because I would like to make this Shining-like horror film. How do you do it? What can you do it? What are the tools that the genre, either found footage or not, can add to it? And I don't know. It's been exciting to solve, and hopefully one day I'll crack it.
Yeah, I think you just have to adapt that King book you're talking about.
Rose Madder?
I think that you should jump on that.
That book, King himself doesn't even like it, and he's like, it feels like forced and tired, and I go, well, like, Steven, that's a lot of your books. As a longtime fan,
Steven, you have a lot of books.
That's just this is what happens when you write a book every 6 months. Like, they're not going to be gold, and like your first book's actually, Carrie and Shining actually, for what they are, well written ish, but even your popular books later, you're not Proust Stephen King, all right? You're not...
You're not always firing on all cylinders.
You're not
there.
David Foster Wallace. No one's asking you to be that. You just write entertaining stories, and that's okay, too.
Definitely pounce on that while you can if no one else cares about that one.
No one remembers it, really. I'm like,
perfect,
Rose Madder,
then.
and they go, what? The Stand. They go, shut up, guys. What are you doing? Rose Madder.
Did you see Antlers, the Scott Cooper movie?
No, did that come out?
Back? It did come out finally.
Oh,
it got delayed
I missed it then. I kept seeing the poster. I'm like, well, I'll check that out, and then it just never happened. But I guess it did, and I missed it for some reason.
It's not good. I thought it was really aggressively bad. It didn't feel like it was a finished movie. We jumped from the first act to the third act, and I was like, did they miss a whole 40 minutes?
Where's the middle of the movie?
Yeah,
what
I was
happens?
like, what is going on now? It's it seems like it's trying to wrap up, and then it was over. I was like, interesting. I don't know how that happened, but it has a great creature design in it, though. That's the only redeeming part of that movie.
Did you see The Lodge? Did you tell me The Lodge was bad?
Oh, I hated The Lodge.
Nah, I had hopes for it, and then somebody said it was bad. I guess it was you, so
it was
then I
probably
didn't go
me.
see it.
I mean, maybe you'll like it. I doubt it, but that's one of the worst offenders of, I guess, what Joe is saying with slow horror, which I generally don't like to group things like that, but it would probably fall under that category. Yeah,
I think slow horror has the problem that neorealism has, where people are just they think they know what it's about. They focus on one thing. They're like, we'll just do really, really long takes. Mm-hmm. That's not why neorealism works. Nothing. It's not that nothing's happening when there's a long take. It's just that information is given to you in a different form. In Umberto D, we're traveling around and learning more and more about this woman as she's making breakfast. We're not just watching her make breakfast.
Right. It's not long for the sake of being long.
We're not just standing there for a really long time and then something spooky happens.
Yeah. It's not people just sitting around waiting and having very sort of moody atmosphere for no reason.
No.
Which The Lodge is trying to... It does that, and then it tries to do a bunch of things that have zero logic to them in a bad way, not in the shining way of what's going on. This is scary. It's more of they're trying way too hard to make this sort of a weird twisty thing that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's the problem that The Hobbit seemed to have, which is weird because it had the same filmmakers as The Lord of the Rings, but it was just doing the things that people thought made they're look at all these battles. The battles aren't why those movies worked, and even when they did the battles, they did them better than you, because there was cause and effect happening.
Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of, physical, real people on set doing things too. Not
that
just CGI
also helps.
Goop.
Shocker. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Which that was just a huge...
It is an indictment of how much that industry changed in those intervening decade, right?
Yeah, massively.
It really encapsulates the before and after of that 10-year gap.
And I don't even think there was much of a debate probably of how to do that in The Hobbit. I think there was just defaulted oh yeah, we can do this now with all the CGI. It's going to be easy, whatever. Don't have to really worry about it as much. And then it just looks horrible and has no grounding to it whatsoever. And it feels like absolutely nothing when you watch it. So, and that's why no one cares about those movies. But they still go back to the original three. I
went and saw the first one with a bunch of people, and then just out of habit saw the other two by myself. All on New Year's Day.
Yeah, same.
So I saw this, and then the second one ends in the middle of a scene.
Yeah, it's the middle of the climax of what's going on. And I guess the movie's over now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the dragon flies through. Benedict Cumberbatch says a line. It goes to black, and we're waiting for the next thing to happen. And the credits come up. Everybody in this full theater went ah, and you're hate it, everybody.
Yeah, the worst part about that is at the beginning of the third one. Then they wrap that up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm why
there's. Why stop it there then? Just have an ending to the second movie then. Did you watch the Amazon show?
No. I don't like Lord of the Rings. If I had not gone and seen that first one with this group of people, I would have seen none of the three of them. I just don't care. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Lord of the Rings films are well made, just not for me. Just not a thing that I enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. So the show came out, I don't care. They're it's got all this background. I'm I don't care. It's fine. It doesn't matter to me.
The Hobbit ruined all things like that. It's kind of with Game of Thrones too, how poorly that ended. That when House of the Dragon,
want 8 prequels? Are you sure?
I was I don't care about the show either now because I know how much they fucked up.
You and the author both. We don't care about Game of Thrones anymore. It's fine. I made my money.
Exactly. I'm gonna have a nice rest of my life, however long that is, just sitting on this HBO money.
Yeah, I don't even blame him. Whatever. You cashed out hard. They bought in too early. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
All right, what are your last looks on The Shining?
One more unrelated question for you.
Okay.
Did you like the VHS series?
I saw the first one, right? That's Cronenberg? No, that's Videodrome.
No.
I maybe didn't. Okay, I don't think I.
It's a horror anthology where the framing devices, they find these like VHS tapes, and they all have like these short horror films in them.
That was the premise of All Hallows Eve 2. That was terrible.
Oh yeah, that was an awful movie.
Awful. But
I never saw Terrifier 2.
Yeah, Terrifier 2, not a scary movie, but I think was a fun movie to watch. Perfectly fine. Also not hinting at a mythology, but not falling over itself to explain it all to you.
I'll watch it at some point. The first two I thought were just so bad. I was like, how is the second one actually?
Yeah, Terrifier, the gross nihilistic film. This movie, kind of fun. Fun movie, I would say.
Interesting.
Fun
I almost
movie.
watched it last night.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is why is this movie not working and why am I enjoying this movie? Like, what are these essential ingredients you need in a film in general, apparently? Because they're both just gory things, like that's how they kind of scare you. But this one I had more fun watching than this one. So that itself was an interesting learning tool there.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen those. I do think I know them, though. All right, you recommend those?
I don't recommend them.
Okay,
but they have a lot of texture, so you might like the texture.
I know.
in
The
them.
anthology idea, I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, it doesn't work because the individual stories aren't strong enough. If there's like one good one and like 5, then it makes it just painful to sit through.
I just think it's weird to go in and out of movies as I'm watching a movie that shakes something off me for some reason. And yeah, I've yet to see one done well, so I just have no hope for the anthology idea itself.
Yeah. Well, the VHS ones aren't going to change your mind, in my opinion. A lot of people like them, but I think they're wrong.
I mean, well, they make a million of them, so I'm not surprised. Yeah. All right, what are your last looks on the film? Why is obviously we like the film, but why does it hold its cultural marker? Why might it have been made at the time? Why did Jack Nicholson choose the role, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, for me, I think it's Kubrick at the top of his game. I think it's a great blend of his craft with this very scary scenario where we don't get a lot of information. All we have is a lot of what the characters are reacting to. And they're in this situation, basically, just follow them from home, which is scary. The scene we were talking about with the baseball bat when she's sort of backing up the stairs and like horrified. It's scary in that sense because of, just what's happening on screen. But it's scary to think about the fact that this has also probably happened at home in their tiny apartment where there's less places to run. And touching on those types of things and like bringing that theme of abuse and putting it in this environment, I think is why it sort of lasted so long, even if at the time people didn't know that it was as scary as it was or as good of a film as it was. Nicholson, he was I don't know if you watched the behind the scenes thing that
I did not, no.
Nicholson was talking in it a little bit about he was drawn to working with Kubrick and how he is such a strong director, obviously, like as a very, very specific director. This idea that Nicholson is saying he doesn't ever want to be the person who is coming up with all of the ideas essentially of what the character should be. And like if he's working with someone who's telling him, pushing back on things or having his own specific take on it, it's more interesting for him as an actor because then he knows he's not repeating himself and not doing something that he's done before, which again, I know people who talk about the performances might argue against that, but I think it is true that Nicholson and his sort of manic, crazy self is being sort of weaponized in this film in a very different way.
Yes, especially in 1980. Afterwards, obviously, I could see it turning into a caricature. But here, it is different. Yeah, we've been meant to like it up until this very point.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that in combination with, what he's doing visually and with the music and with the weird structure of it has made it a very lasting film.
Yeah, why does Nicholson choose this movie? Well, because as Joe and I have found out doing these other 33 films, Brady, is Jack Nicholson, giant film nerd. Huge Tarantino-like film lover.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
So when you're like, would you like to work with this extremely talented director? He's always like, yes, anytime, for any amount of money, doesn't matter. So why? Well, of course he's going to work with Kubrick.
Yeah, that makes
complete sense. He'd be insane if he didn't want to. That makes total sense. It is, like you talked about, an interesting way to use a persona he had been kind of crafting as an actor over the last 6 years that have made him successful. You bring up going up the stairs with a bat. Like, that's an interesting thing to talk about because you get the exact same scene in the sequel where it's an axe now and it's Danny and Rose Lady. And that one, not scary. So, yeah, the groundedness of it, with the lack of the supernatural effects at play here, I just think is a very important thing that can't be overlooked. And you have your supernatural elements. They just don't have to be the prime motivator. Like, you have the time for this conflict to build out. We watch this family dynamic deteriorate in front of us, so it's all very well supported and seated just in performance and in visuals, and it's a very relatable type of horror that a lot of horror films can't do well. Even ones that are like serial killers, like Michael Myers, in the first film at least, is a very grounded type of killer, but he's always like appearing suddenly from somewhere, and it seems really hard to kill him. And even though it's just like this guy who went crazy, like there's something more divorced from a person's normal reality than this film is encapsulating.
Yeah, and then they just went pure supernatural later with Michael Myers and through all of that, all the good stuff they had in the first one. What if Jason were in space? Yeah, I have 2 more notes on The Shining that I want to bring up before we depart. So one thing that I really like, this one is a little bit more of a real thing that I noticed that I wanted to mention is the titles and how it breaks up the film. It starts off very broad, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have like a broad time jump of like a month later, and then it goes by days of the week, and then it goes down to like time, like specific hour of the day. And I just love the idea of like you start off wide and then you kind of hone in, because now it's like we're getting so specific and all this is unfolding at such a fast rate now for these characters that we're not talking in terms of days or weeks or months.
Yeah, it makes it feel like it's speeding up, and it's another way that Kubrick is playing with time effectively. Again, this sort of backbone film grammar thing. Yeah, he's like setting up certain stuff for us. He's almost putting them in somewhat arbitrarily, and at certain points he stops using them entirely, but then brings them back. So like he's setting up this pattern for us to keep track of everything. And then he takes that away from us too, so we don't even have that to kind of like hold us over. Like he's setting up a lot of expectations and taking them away, but not in a way that feels like half-assed or like slowing us down. Like we don't notice when it's one day and then we cut somewhere else and now Halloran's on the plane, even though we should have a title card there because clearly at least a day has passed. Mm-hmm. But we feel its absence, but we don't need it there for the movie to make sense.
Right. And then the next time you get one, you're like, oh shit, how much time has gone by since all this stuff has just happened then? Because you're like, it was telling us and now it wasn't. And then it's like, oh, we're back to being told, but
we're on shaky ground, so we don't get to ever feel safe. And I think that's smart. What was your other point you wanted to bring up?
The other point is that, and I've seen this movie multiple times, obviously, and I never really thought about this specifically until my rewatch last night, but the way Danny eats his sandwich at the beginning is so fucking weird because he eats it right down the middle and then the sandwich just like falls in half. Did you notice that? I was like, what kind of a wild person eats a sandwich that way?
He's been abused. Leave him alone.
Go back and watch that and come back and tell me if you don't think that that's the weirdest fucking way for someone to eat a sandwich. It's very disturbing stuff. Go back and rewatch it. I promise you'll be like, why the fuck is he eating the sandwich like that? He's insane.
I just spent a lot of time, like the crazy people in the documentary, trying to figure out, like, he changed all these things. Why did he change? Like, some things he just didn't need to change. Why did he change them? I don't know. He makes the miniseries makes the Overlook very small. It looks much smaller. And they said, we want it to be claustrophobic, so you feel like you're trapped. And it's crazy that I feel less trapped there. It feels that it's bigger, feels scarier.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because, so I went back last night, because, I don't know, it was like midnight or something by the time I finished the first one. And I went and specifically just watched the Overlook scenes from Dr. Sleep. Yeah. Just to kind of like compare the two. And it seems so much smaller in Dr. Sleep. Yeah. Like it seemed more claustrophobic, but I know that they went to great lengths to like exactly replicate.
It just might have been the lens. They might have used a tighter lens to give it that feeling.
And I think that's what it is. But it's like what you were just saying is like it feels, when it's huge feeling like it's eating you almost, is when I think it's working the best. Because when it's like tight and sort of claustrophobic feeling, it almost takes away a lot of its, threat.
If I'm afraid of an intruder coming to attack me, I'm going to go into a corner of a room and then like just focus on the entrance the whole time with my weapon. nothing can sneak up on me. But when it's this big thing, anything can come from anywhere. Like, you can't monitor the entire place. And then, that swallowing effect happens. Like, a lot of the moments where I felt more unnerved was when the characters were little bits in a big scene. So I think shooting this on this much wider lens was a lot scarier than people might think and realize at the time.
Definitely, because even when they're in like the main lobby where he's doing most of his typing and it has a big staircase, even that scene in Dr. Sleep, it looks like, perfect almost like to the original, right? But it just feels like half the size. And because of that, it just seems like, this place, it seems less significant than to the characters.
I know. Interesting thought. All right, well, Joe had to leave early, but we're always happy to have him stop by. We're happy to have our guest, Braden Schleuter, come on down.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be here.
Excellent. And Lev Van Rensselaer, obviously, the audio maven that we are craving. Our sponsors, Twin Town Games, play forever and ever and ever and ever and ad nauseum, blah, blah, blah. And I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. You may find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at QuixoticUnited.com and social media, presumably, with a similar sounding name. Thank you all for listening. Brady, say goodnight.
Good night. Thank you.
Did you know what happened last night on the TCM channel?
Turner Classic Movies? No. Did
Yes.
somebody say something racist?
No. But a man came out of hiding. A man that only comes out of hiding once in a while now. Our old friend Warren Beatty.
He's still alive?
Yeah. So he had a thing last night that aired live on Turner Classic Movies called The Dick Tracy Special. Tracy Zooms In. I'm not kidding you. He still holds the rights to Dick Tracy, which he will not let go of. But in order to keep hold of these rights, he needs to use the Dick Tracy IP at least like every 10 years or something.
Okay.
And I believe it was 10 years ago that he had a Dick Tracy special that was a 30-minute special where he was just interviewing himself as Dick Tracy.
He's taking a little bit from the Talking Heads. Yeah.
So in this one, it was Leonard Maltin and Ben Mankiewicz interview famous detective Dick Tracy about his life and career with a surprise appearance by legendary actor and director Warren Beatty.
Who would have seen that coming?
How old is Warren Beatty? He's like the same age as Nicholson, and he's just like, I need to hold on to this. This is my legacy. Dick Tracy is my legacy.
What an odd IP to hold on to.
Yeah, I remember watching it a couple years ago during the pandemic, and I was like, this is an odd artifact. I don't think I hated it, but I was just like, this is strange. I remember seeing the trailer a lot on like a VHS of like Roger Rabbit, I believe.
Makes sense.
It's fucking Warren Beatty, Madonna, Al Pacino, Mandy Patinkin, Seymour Cassell from all my Cassavetes films, Dick Van Dyke, Dustin Hoffman, James Caan, Paul Sorvino. Like, what a lineup here. Yeah. This is crazy. And they're all wearing some fucking weird prosthetics on their face, especially Pacino. Ooh, boy.
Yeah, it's like the Popeye movie. I was trampolining.
You know what? We didn't end up going.
Fucking Julian.
No, hey, why? Hey, that's my kid.
You better correct him.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I will not.
Yeah.
I will say...
What happened?
Daddy understands that you were not feeling well, and because Daddy wasn't feeling well either. Still am not feeling well, but it's okay. I did not get a response from you yesterday when I sent you first look at Glenn Howerton in Blackberry.
It reminds me of maybe it's going to be like the Pop-Tart film with Jerry Seinfeld.
Did that come out?
No. But maybe it's going to be in that vein of just like, it's going to be like a weird parody founder film or something. I don't know.
Well, hopefully it does not take itself too seriously because it looks awful.
Yeah, it is weird. Good for the old people going out to the movies.
Hell yeah, right? You're reading
Like
them
over
now.
there, I say, okay, makes sense. Over here, I was surprised. Like I'm like, wow, I haven't been in a theater this crowded since Black Panther on release night. My goodness.
The first one?
No, the second one.
Second one. Oh, yeah, weird that you saw the second one.
I didn't. Yeah, I've been trying to be social. I regret it.
That's nice of you. Yeah, it's a long movie, and I know you don't like superhero shit.
Oh, everybody was
And you
there.
and the thing is, 3 weeks before, probably, you had seen another superhero movie, so that's a lot of superhero movies for you. Close quarters.
Oh, I wouldn't do it again.
I liked the last, 5 minutes of that movie a lot.
Of Black
With
Panther?
the reveal of the child. Yeah. And the reveal of the child with the Rihanna song, I was like, this could have been like a quick 5-minute short. It's the birth of a new Black Panther. That's all that I needed to see.
Have a new Black Panther. Why do I get two new Black Panthers in one movie?
Well, I don't think she wanted to be Black Panther. I think there needed to be an adult Black Panther, and she was the next one in the family line.
But it's not even going to matter, right? Because unless you're going to skip time in your cinematic universe, which I don't think you can do.
I think they're going to figure something out with this fucking Ant-Man movie because I saw the trailer for it yesterday and they just revealed the entire plot. And I'm like, oh, so this is what the movie's been about because the trailer for the Ant-Man movie leading up to what I saw yesterday was like, hey, we're just going to have a lot of CGI globby glue stuff.
So what's going on? You think they're going to do crazy time stuff in the new Marvel film? That's what you're saying?
Do you care about this at all? I don't want to spoil anything for you.
No, I certainly do not.
No, not you. I'm talking about Braden.
Oh, yeah, I forget there are other people here.
I don't know if you care about it at all. I saw the trailer for the Ant-Man movie yesterday. They put out a new trailer that just reveals the entire plot for the movie. And I'm like, oh, well, you didn't. Yeah, well, they didn't do that for the first two trailers they did.
It does seem to be every trailer now, though, for any movie. No movie can help but reveal the entirety of the film these days. What happened to the art of making a trailer?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we see the last 3 minutes in that trailer. And I'm like, all right, well, didn't need to see all this. But, because clearly they're killing off Paul Rudd. Why would they keep him off for anything else? He does not need to be in the series anymore. So obviously that's going to be the big
Why
emotional.
don't they need Ant-Man? Don't people like Ant-Man?
Well, they just don't need him anymore.
What do we need him? Did they ever need him? Was need ever the thing Ant-Man was?
100% agree. Yes, it's very clear. I don't know why I continue to watch them. Maybe just because I liked going to the theater. That's about it. I like having popcorn in my mouth.
There are
while
other
I watch
movies you
something
could
on the
see.
screen.
Movies come out every week, Joe.
Not a lot of movies come to my theater.
All right.
Avatar was taking up a lot of the spots. I never got the Fablemans. You never got the
Fablemans?
I never got the Fablemans. I never got Women Talking. Never got The Whale. I never got.
Well, those two make sense at least.
Yeah, but it's just none of these
Never got
movies.
Spielberg? What?
Never got Isn't that crazy? No Spielberg.
Yeah, there's only room for so many 3-hour movies in your theater, Joe. That's the problem. All right. Well, then we will go. Well, did you like 80 for Brady? Did you like old ladies?
I haven't seen it yet.
I thought you went there yesterday. That's what you were talking about.
No, I saw Titanic.
Why you saw Titanic?
Because it was fucking
Over
amazing.
weird Tom Brady film? You fool!
Well, also, I told you it was sold out. The two showings of 80 for Brady at my theater were sold out. I saw all the old ladies go in there.
I thought that was inclusive. It was sold out, including your ticket.
They're going to make some sort of awful sequel to that movie now.
81 for Brady.
I don't know how they made the first one. I'm extremely impressed it's doing well. I don't know why or how.
Good. Sure. Let Jane Fonda, Rita Moreno, Sally Field, and why do I always forget the last one? Lily Tomlin. Because she hasn't won an Oscar.
You forget the star.
Oh, she's the star of the movie?
Yeah.
How much of Jane Fonda do we get?
All four of them, main characters. I mean, but Lily Tomlin's the one who had... They all have little arcs, but Lily Tomlin's the ringleader of the group.
Wait, so you've seen it, Patrick?
Of course I've seen it,
Of course
Brady.
he saw it.
I did, I'm too into football. Of course I'm watching it. I'm just extremely confused why it got made. I have no idea how this happened.
It's weird.
So many movies don't get made for dumb reasons, and they're like, we're going to make this movie.
Patrick, Did you see who produced the movie?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I did see it. But again,
Tom Brady.
somebody has to be funding and greenlighting the movie. Like, he can produce it all he wants, but somebody has to be like, yes, go ahead.
He's probably like, get this made.
The reason why I won't see it is because, like, when I had more time to watch football and be a football fan, I was an Atlanta Falcons fan.
Oh,
So
well, that was a bad
Super Bowl
choice.
Rings
Oh, boy.
very true to me. That was a really bad. That was like the end of the era of me being really into football because it broke me so much. Was that specific game, and so the fact that they made this lighthearted comedy about
your misery.
yeah, it's like it hits very differently. For
Well,
me.
yeah, okay.
So it's sort of a
Damn.
traumatizing thing on my end. It's not as fun as the trailers would have it seem.
No, I definitely am watching it and feeling like, I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Go for it. I'm like, God, man, the Falcons people must hate this.
Yeah, we really fucked it up. It was
having
like
to
the
spend
worst.
40 minutes doing this all over again.
It was heartbreaking.
Bob Balaban's in there.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
wow.
don't worry. He's not narrating. It's okay.
How much is Gronk in the movie?
He and the other non-Tom Brady people are not in it super often.
Oh, okay.
Tom Brady shows up in Lily Tomlin's fantasies quite a bit, we'll say.
How much of Guy Fieri do we get?
More than I'd like. Yeah, and I'm not saying his name like that. It's just Guy Fieri. That's it. Fieri. The end. That's all it needs to be.
I'm Guy Fieri?
Yeah.
They had to add a little extra seasoning onto the name.
Not doing that.
That line made them $10 million.
Probably.
That pushed it over the mark for them.
Yeah, that was some smart marketing on their
Rita
plan.
Moreno has Guy Fieri's head on his.
All right. We're gonna start the movie. We're gonna start the
Okay.
Jesus. We're gonna start the podcast.